it's a great rally in Colorado at the Capitol today. So one of my favorite things to do is actually go to the Capitol. This is the seat of government here in Colorado. So I love being there. Beautiful building, beautiful weather today, great crowd. You know, people say in blue states, oh, we can't get people to come out. We had a lot of people out there today, so I was really impressed. Love seeing the legislators out there and how enthusiastic they still are. I think the highlight for me is giving out Patriot pins and a Challenge Coin Award. There's so many grassroots that are doing so much important work, and they do it for free. I mean, this is all volunteer work. They do it because they love their country and they believe in the cause. So for me to be able to stand on a stage, recognize the great patriots actually doing the hard work, that's my favorite part of the whole thing.
We're expecting some legislators to make their way out here during the course of this. I just don't know exactly when. All right? And when they come out, we'll make sure we acknowledge them and give them a few minutes with you. Okay? So, to get it started, Laura Neimeister, our state director.
Hey, hello Colorado, how are you doing today? Who was here last year? What do you think about the weather this year? Yeah, way better. So thank you all for coming out. I sure appreciate it. You know, this is really for you. This is our appreciation. I mean, you guys have come out for this. But you are the grassroots. You are everything. You are what makes this organization work and tick and all the progress that we are making. And I'm telling you, I think everybody knows what happened on Monday, but we made progress. So who testified on Monday or who was listening to the testimonies? Thank you. Yes, please give them an applaud. Thank you so much. There was so much work that went into that. And you guys just did an awesome job. They are listening, and if they're listening now, we are not going away. We are not going away until Colorado becomes one of the 34 states that has the resolution passed to call for an Article 5 convention. We want our federal government reined in. Amen. So we got a great program. We got some great speakers. I hope our legislators will come out. But we want to start this off the right way. We need to honor God because it's Him that has blessed this nation so abundantly. So let me give you Ken Kurt to give us our opening prayer.
Heavenly Father, we come before Thee to thank Thee for the glorious day that You've presented us and a time to come together in camaraderie in support of saving our nation. We ask that You guide our hands and let it be Thy will that be done and not our own. But through Your grace and through the glory of Your Son, Jesus Christ, we ask that You bless each and every one here so that they may know Your glory. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Lynn, if you want to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Is Lynn out there?
Okay, if you could remove your hats, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Please keep your caps removed. I'd like to introduce Senator Kevin Lundberg, who's going to lead us in the national anthem. You should have some paper that you can follow along with him.
Okay, now I don't know if she warned you or not that when I sing the national anthem, I like to do the first verse and the final verse. So please join me as you can. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Oh, thus be it ever when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, win our cause, it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust, and the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome everyone, and thanks for showing up this fine-looking day. My name is Bill Powell, a retired Marine who's been asked to speak for a few minutes about an organization many of you are familiar with. That being the Colorado Veterans Coalition for the Article 5 Convention of States Project. We're nonpartisan, nonprofit founded for the purpose of returning power to the states and the American dream to millions of ordinary citizens. It is a privilege this morning to honor fellow veterans and their families, as most of our backing comes from them. We'd like to sincerely and publicly acknowledge all you vets for all you have done and continue to do. I enlisted in 1967 and barely out of high school. Arriving at Parris Island, Staff Sergeant Bradley quickly introduced me to Marine Corps philosophy. That being, pain is beautiful, but extreme pain is extremely beautiful. I was still engrossed in his insight the day I left the Corps in 2002. First, a bit about American veterans in general. Since the first shots at Lexington and Concord, American men and women have answered our nation's call. From the time General Washington commanded the Continental Army, over 40 million have served in the nation's armed forces, and 1 million have given their lives in its defense. From the soldiers who shivered and starved through winter at Valley Forge, to the doughboys crouched in the muddy trenches of France, to the platoons who patrolled the hasty jungles of Vietnam, and the young Americans who guarded the deserts of Iraq and the heights of Afghanistan. We honor them all. Lest we forget those who made the ultimate sacrifice, here are 3 World War II illustrations I picked from literally tens of thousands. Many are aware of the aerial warfare that occurred over Europe, but few realize that 25,844 airmen died in mishaps while turning the U.S. into the world's preeminent air power. 1,000 aircraft were lost making it to the front. Or because the Japanese were so well trained, so well prepared, and so well led, survivors described Tarawa as 1 square mile of hell. Certainly on par with the Devil's Den, the Peach Orchard, or Cold Harbor. And there's the matter of 52 American submarines still on patrol, including USS Bullhead ironically lost the day Fat Man was dropped. President Kennedy once said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." There are few ways more noble to serve our country than through military service. Is it not?
You turn it up. Turn it up.
Let me go back. President Kennedy once said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." There are few ways more noble to serve our country than through military service. And the nation owes a psychological payment in return. Those we recognize today all shared in a cause larger than self. Individuals willing to stand in the breach whenever Lady Liberty was threatened. You previously gave a large piece of yourself, and you continue to sustain the Republic through our COS initiative in these troubled times. I cannot thank you enough for remembering. The oath we took to support and defend the Constitution never expires. As Charlton Heston was fond of saying, sacrifice is part of the deal. Of course, tribute would simply not be complete if we did not recognize our military families. They also sacrifice much. Mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, wives and husbands, daughters and sons, close friends and loved ones. When members deploy, they leave all those behind, who in their absence soldier on. Life is normal. Only you know it's nothing like normal. For our military families, there's never been an easy burden. We know that you've lived through difficult times and taken a heavy load. So thanks for once again keeping the faith. If you've not yet signed our petition, please go to conventionestates.com and consider joining 55,000 others in the Centennial State. Passing the COS resolution in Colorado puts our nation one step closer to safeguarding our constitutional freedoms and reaffirms that oath we all took so long ago. This morning, we'd like to salute every Colorado soldier, sailor, Marine, Airman, Coast Guardsman, DOD civilian, National Guardsman, reservist, family member, and supporter who answered the bell. I'm talking about the Liberty Bell. May God bless this truly beautiful state and the Republic, which forever shall be the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Bill. And we really do want to honor our veterans. If you could come down and stand in front, please. Vivian, would you get a group shot of them? Everybody just give a round of applause. These guys sacrificed everything. And we thank you for your service. So why don't you just tell us if you are Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, first responders. Who did I leave out? Guys, thank you so much. Now you're going to hear from somebody who is a true Convention of States patriot. He has been fighting for this cause since at least since the beginning, probably in 13. He has done so much. He is still fighting for us in Colorado. He has been to the Convention of States simulation twice now, and he is involved, as far as I can tell, in every area of politics in Colorado. His name shows up everywhere. Please give a warm welcome for Senator Kevin Lundberg.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. Of course, your introduction was half of my speech, but that's okay. I have been involved with Convention of the States pretty much since its inception. I remember it was Mike Ferris who gave me a call and explained a little bit. Well, first off, Mike came to Colorado to talk about Article 5 in general. And he came to a little meeting that was happening at the Independence Institute back in 2012, I believe it was. And I thought, well, if he's going to show up, this might be important to look at. And so I went and realized that the time has come for the states to step up and assert their constitutional authority side by side with the federal government, because it hasn't been that way for a long time. And that's what Convention of the States is really all about. It's we the people, through our individual states, establishing the constitutional balance of power between the federal government, the states, and we the people. So, actually, one of the first things I did is I helped to form the Article 5 State Legislators Caucus, which was designed to incorporate state legislators from around the country and keep them informed on what is happening within the whole Article 5 effort. And of course, Convention of the States has been a real leader, probably the leader, really, is what I would say, in this whole effort. But we've been, since 2013, providing monthly newsletters that we send out to every state legislator in the country. Now, we send it, not necessarily that they all read it, but they all have no excuse, because they're getting timely information on what's happening. And one of the, actually, let me say this, because we had here in Colorado, there was a COS resolution presented in the House State Affairs Committee on Monday. And I attended that, and actually Mike Ferris did too, remotely, but nonetheless he's still in the battle as well. And of course Mark Meckler has been really leading the charge for such a long time. I'm so grateful for your leadership in all of this. But at that hearing on Monday, the opponents showed up. Not too many, 3 or 4 of them. That's about it. And we had about 30 some on our side, so you can kind of tell where the energy and the excitement is. But the opponents said, well, we're not so sure we can trust this Article 5 Convention of States effort because there are no rules. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the rules that do exist. It starts with Article 5 of the United States Constitution that very specifically empowers the states to independently create amendments to be considered by the states to the Constitution. And if you look at what Alexander Hamilton said in Federalist number 85, he said, we put this in place just in case the federal government ever became too large and too controlling. Now, if that doesn't describe them today, I don't know what does. And that's why it's there in the first place. That's why Article 5 has this provision for the states to initiate amendments at a convention to propose amendments, not a constitutional convention, a convention to propose amendments, even as Congress has done or has the authority to do, and has done and successfully amended the Constitution 27 times. Well, Convention of the States is actually held, as Laura mentioned, 2 simulated conventions to show how because within Article 5 itself, it specifies what the rules are and what the role Congress has and what the role the states have. But what about the convention itself? How's that to really function? And that's where I think a lot of our opponents were saying, well, there are no rules. Well, it is true that whenever a convention of any sort forms, that body adopts the rules initially. But I've been on several different committees where we've been developing rules for an Article 5 Convention of States. But COS in particular held 2 simulated conventions, one back in, 2016, and then just in 2023, back in August. And I attended both of those, and actually I served as the chair to the Fiscal Restraints Committee for both of those as well. So I kind of saw it from the inside out, if you will. And if there's one thing I want to emphasize, it's that a convention of states to propose amendments is a very orderly and well-defined mechanism for proposing amendments to the 50 states. And of course, you need 3/4, which is a minimum of 38 states to actually ratify. So nothing happens to the Constitution unless that ratification occurs. But the very process itself, and of course the simulations were very truncated. I expect a real convention of states to be a very long, deliberative, careful event where we hammer out the ideas very precisely, because once you come up with that proposed amendment, you don't change it. It's either a thumbs up or a thumbs down for all the states. And if one doesn't work, if it's got some fatal flaw, well, at least 13 states are going to recognize that and never actually ratify it. But I saw in every commissioner that came from all 50 states in both of those those simulated conventions, a very serious understanding of what we were endeavoring to do. And I know that will be multiplied many times over when it actually happens in reality, that there is a convention of states called for Article 5. And I say when, I didn't say if. I said when, because I see two things, and I'll leave you with this. One is that there's a growing awareness of why we need an Article 5 Convention of the States. And it's exactly what Alexander Hamilton said way back in the Federalist Papers event, and that is, if the federal government becomes too big and too controlling, the states need to step in and be a part of it. The other thing is, it is becoming painfully obvious to everyone. Now, it's still kind of hard in this building to convince anybody in the other party. I'm a Republican, in case you didn't know. But frankly, a convention of states has to be not a partisan event, but an American event. And to preserve the nation that was founded on the principles of liberty, on the principles of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the inalienable rights that are granted by God but protected and secured by our government. That's what we need again, is that government that will secure our God-given rights. And that is why, and that is the number one reason why Convention of the States is a necessary organization, and an Article 5 Convention of States is absolutely essential for the future of our nation. Thank you for being a part of it, and let's move forward and continue to work. I know we are on the right path, and we're headed in the right direction. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Senator. And what do you think? Should we send Senator Lundberg as one of our delegates when we go to convention? Yes, absolutely. I'd like to have him represent us. So we are blessed right now. These guys have been fighting a war for the past almost 100 days. Representative Richard Holtorf is here to speak with you guys for a moment, so please give him a warm welcome.
So, I've been up here for 5 years now. Kevin, get over here. Come here, get over here. So, there's people that stand up and fight for the Convention of States movement, and Kevin Lundberg has been a warrior, not only in his time in the legislature, but with this movement right now. Now, there's a bunch of, I'm from the country, so we do country speak. I call them jackwagons. People say, what's a jackwagon? I can't tell you right now. There's a bunch of jackwagons up there on the second floor, right there, and I want them to all hear you when we sound off for Kevin Lundberg and the Convention of States movement, because you're here and I want them to know you're in the house. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Let's go. Yeah! Convention of States! All right. So I think, thank you for what you do, sir. And there are people in this chamber that support you 100%. We've run resolution after resolution that we've tried to get read across the desk, as they say. Sometimes we get that, but then they don't get through committee. Other times, I don't think we've ever gotten one on the House and got it voted through the House chamber. I've ran those resolutions in past years, and we try to offer them to other members and different members and new members as you all and we all take this journey. But the one thing you need to know is don't quit, don't stop. It's a game of inches and yards, okay? And you're making progress. You guys understand that, right? Let's give it up. Come on, you're making progress. I just talked to your regional director here, and she's like, yeah, we're making progress. We're getting closer to the finish line. Now, here's what scares the HE double hockey sticks out of people. And you can spell that for yourself. If I say the word hail, it's H-A-I-L. If I say it, but I'm told not to cuss when I'm doing these speeches, so I'm going to try not to. But some things will make you hop and mad and you want to cuss. But what people up there and out in Washington, D.C. are scared to death of is you actually might change something. You might change the game that's being played with the establishment, okay? And that's on both sides of the aisle, Democrat, Republican. You guys know that, right? There's a bunch of them. And I'm not an establishment guy. In fact, I push back against the good old boy system, the let's go behind closed doors and shake hands and kumbaya and figure out how we can still navigate things through. And the biggest problem I have is the balanced budget, okay, in this country's deficit. It has been said that in the next 10 years, there's a good chance that this country fiscally will not be able to sustain itself because of what we're doing. And your Convention of States movement, as I understand it, and John Grabowski, correct me if I'm wrong, or anybody, correct me if I'm wrong, if you call the Article 5 Convention of States and you say we're going to fix that and we're going to force the federal government to do a balanced budget, that ends it right there. Is that right? Yeah. It ends it. And they are forced to balance the budget every year fiscally at the federal government. That is something I truly believe in. You know, and that's one of my passions in supporting the Convention of States movement. I've signed your pledge every year. I'll continue to sign it. There are other members up there that are battling on second reading. It's not that they don't want to be down here. We're fighting some godless heathens up there. Not all of them, but there's plenty of them up there that you can put in a basket and shake them pretty hard. But it won't fix the problem. So we're up there fighting. We're standing up for your rights, and we're trying to do the right thing for Colorado. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. Thank you for not giving up and continuing what you do. God bless you, and may the Article 5 Convention of States movement continue to move on and charge forward. God bless all of you. Hell yeah! Hell yeah!
Nice hat! Thank you, Representative. So we have a new face for you to meet this year. I don't know if any of you remember, Grant Martin was our regional director, and somebody at National thought that having a regional director who lived in Florida might not be the best thing for Colorado, so they moved us to a new region, and we are now part of the Wild West region. And we have South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Colorado. We are the West, and we are awesome. And something happened. We lost our regional director. So we have a new regional director from Florida, and I would like to introduce her, Miss Deanna Beckett.
Well, I'm originally born and raised in North Dakota. Then I moved to South Dakota for 27 years, and we got tired of shoveling and falling on the ice, so we skipped all the rest of the states and moved to Florida. And then I had the privilege and honor of overseeing, coming and looking over the Wild West region. That's where my heart is. So my body, physical body, is in Florida, but my brain and heart are right here, all in here. And we also have Nebraska and Kansas. So we have the biggest region. It's amazing. But I want to talk today about habits creating excellence in all of us. Habit is defined in Webster's online dictionary as this: a behavior pattern acquired by frequent repetition that shows itself in regularity or increased facility of performance. Or also, an acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. How many of you have bad habits? I'm glad you're honest. I do too. How many of you have good habits? All right, so balance is good. Well, one of our most famous founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, created excellent habits. In his late teens and early 20s, think about the late teens and early 20-somethings that you know. I have 2 children that are in that early 20-somethings. They probably didn't have the maturity that our founding fathers have, but it's coming around. Our young people are coming around. But in his late teens, early 20s, Ben wanted to create a system that he could track his habits. One of the things he did was laid out some virtues, and then he defined them. Really long definitions. He created 12 of them. He had a mentor that was a Quaker friend, and this Quaker friend knew Ben very well. He let this Quaker friend read his 12 virtues, look at his system for checking off and reevaluating in the morning and at night. And this friend said to him, Ben, you're missing one. And this is where you find Benjamin Franklin's 13 virtues. The one he was missing was humility, and it's the shortest definition. Ben defined humility as imitate Jesus and Socrates. Well, Ben Franklin's 13 virtues that he developed weekly as habits to build his personal character helped him mature with age, not just age alone. By focusing on one character virtue each week and regularly reviewing his progress, Franklin developed lifelong habits for his success. You all have done that. Now, as Laura mentioned, Colorado is a consistent leader in the Wild West region. You are part of the largest landmass region with Convention of States. So as mentioned before, you're surrounded by some powerful grassroots states. Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, both the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Kansas. I imagine this crowd has developed lifelong habits, great work ethic, and moral excellence, or great character. I see it and hear it in many of you. Now, I'm not quite sure about Frank, but in the rest of you, I experience it. I had to pick on somebody. You may have had your character put to the test these last 4 years. I sure have. I'm going to mention 3 keys that define 3 of Franklin's virtues that can help us keep moving forward. And we're going to use an acronym. It's called CAP, C-A-P. C is build courage. Everybody say courage. Courage. You can do better. Say courage. Courage. How do we build courage? Well, what is the fear? What is the opposite of courage? Fear. Cowardice. Compliance. Compliance. Yeah, haven't we heard that enough these past few years? Well, Franklin's virtue resolution defines courage rather well. Resolve to perform what you ought, perform without fail what you resolve. Or I reword it, do what you say you're going to do. Don't we do that here in the Wild West? Yeah. What we need to do is say what we're going to do or speak power back to that fear. Now, I know a lot of us talk to ourselves. It's a sign of genius. Did you know that? It is. Much of our internal dialogue tends to be negative, though, and we don't do enough uplifting speaking to ourselves alone. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to do some practice right here and right now. Just like we were hollering up at the second floor, we're going to do this. It may seem crazy, but we're in a crowd. So I'm going to say a few phrases, and I want you to repeat after me. I am courageous. I am courageous. That was wimpy. Let's do this again. I am courageous. I am courageous. I am a patriot. I am a patriot. I stand for freedom. I stand for freedom. I have confidence. I have confidence. I am full of courage. I am full of courage. Do you feel awake yet? I think the Democrats don't like those words, so let's holler those all the time. All right, so what was the first letter? C. Courage. A is take action. Everybody say action. Action. One of Franklin's virtues he worked on weekly was industry. His definition, lose no time, be always employed in something useful, cut off all unnecessary actions. Your Colorado Convention of States volunteer leaders work hard daily. Would you give everybody a round of applause who put this stuff together? This was a lot of work, probably about 5 months of work And testimony was, a couple months, but this has been, a year in the process. This was a lot of work. These leaders need more people to step up this year, to connect to more legislators, to build this Colorado grassroots army, and train up excellent leaders. You can get involved at conventionofstates.com and take action. Sign the petition, take action if you haven't done that. So, we're spelling CAP. What was C again? Courage. What was A? Action. Yes. Finally, we get to P. Choose peace. Sorry. Franklin's virtue tranquility was another that grew his excellence. His definition of tranquility is not be not disturbed at trifles or at accidents common or unavoidable. Or I say, chill out. This may be opposite of what we've been taught to do. We are the pull up your bootstraps kind of generation and region of the country. But I learned a phrase in some social media coaching, and it fits many areas of our lives. Are you ready for it? If you take nothing away today, slow down to speed up. How many of you have sent an email and forgot the attachment? Because we're going too fast. If we slow down, take a look at it, reread it again, we attach it, we don't have to double our work. But it works in so much of our lives. Social media posts. How many of you posted and look back and go, there's a misspelling? How many of you have seen memes with misspellings and you want to share them, but they have a misspelling and you go, nope, got to pass that one up? But it also works with time with family if we try to rush that slowing down. So there's some science here. Science has proven that slowing down or silence is life-changing. Silence relieves stress and tension. I need a little of that. Silence replenishes our mental resources. According to Huffington Post, I'm not going to say if it's a left or right wing where I got these things, but it's science. Getting quiet can regenerate brain cells. 2 hours of silence per day prompted cell development in the hippocampus, the brain region related to the formation of memory involving the senses. And then according to medicaldaily.com, silence improves memory, brain growth, and relieves stress. As I age, I need all the brain growth I can get. So you cannot pour from an empty cup. We must care for our brain cells. If our cup is empty, we cannot pour into others. We all need this. So I encourage you to carve out 2 hours a day. Yeah, that's 2 hours a day of silence, if you can. If nothing else, 2 hours a week. Take time to be quiet and experience peace. Now, don't be silent too long. We need you in the fight after your rest. We need your skills, your efforts, your energy to stand against the evil and tyranny all around this country. If you can give 5 hours each week, we need you. If you have leadership skills to bring to the team, we need you. If you're willing to grow and to learn, we need you. Again, you can get involved at conventionofstates.com/act. Build courage with us, take action, and choose peace. By creating the leader in you first, you then can begin to lead others to excellence. Colorado's history is based on the ground we stand on, right? Mining and agriculture, that's the basis. Hard work, sweat, and grit. Like Franklin did with his 13 virtues, we are to dig deep like the cultivator in the dirt. When we sharpen our skills, we master our life. Where excellence is expected, excellence is achieved. So let's take some time now to recognize some excellence in your Colorado COS leaders right now. I'm going to ask Mark and Laura to come back up, and we're going to do some award recognition.
I gotta lower this. So for the past 3 years, I've had the privilege of being the state director here in Colorado. Watching this team grow, thank you, it's an honor. Watching this team grow and watching the level of dedication from our volunteers is an absolute inspiration. Today, we want to recognize a few of those volunteers who have given so much to this cause. Our first recipient signed the petition in 2018 and became a volunteer activist in January of 23. He's always ready to answer the call when something is needed. By his actions, you can see that he truly loves this country. His fun, positive spirit is a delight to be around, and always on display, especially when he was talking with people at events about Convention of States. He has the true spirit of a patriot and contributes so much to the success of Convention of States. We are blessed to have him on our team. Would you please congratulate Lynn Ray?
All right, Lynn.
Our next recipient has been a supporter since 2021. He also began as a volunteer activist, but has become an invaluable part of the Veterans Coalition. He's one of the hardest working men you could meet, wanting to see Colorado build a victorious grassroots army. He works tirelessly to see an Article 5 convention come to fruition. He is a true leader and has proven that in his service to his country and his service to Colorado Convention of States. He has given so much to building the VCD team, and sadly he is not here today, but I need to announce his name anyhow. It is a privilege to have Ken Kuslich on our VCD team. Bill Powell, will you coming up to accept for him? Come on up. Come accept. I love the passion and the excellence our next recipient puts into her COS work. She is so creative and goes above and beyond when called on for help. She has only been with Colorado Convention of States for about 2 years, but she quickly jumped in to use her talents to communicate the Convention of States message around Colorado. She does so much to help those around her be successful and is constantly thinking of new ways to improve COS communication. Her blogs, videos, and landing pages reflect her passion to see America return to the exceptional republic that was born over 235 years ago. I'm honored to know her and to serve alongside our state communications coordinator, Vivian Garcia.
Way to go, Vivian!
Finally, I had some difficulty with this because this person, as you know, is just indescribable. Mere words cannot describe this final recipient, but I'm going to do my best. He's been with Colorado Convention of States for over 3 years. He's worked tirelessly over those years to educate legislators about Convention of States. He's at the Capitol almost every week, willing to take any volunteer to meet their legislator and witness the legislative process for the very first time. He volunteers at events and pours his heart and soul into every task. He's now building a legislative team that is absolutely going to multiply Colorado's advancement. His work is always done with excellence, and I know our success in the past 3 years has been because of his dedication. I'm honored that he has chosen to be on the Colorado COS team, and of course I talk about John Grabowski.
Yeah, John!
Come on, John.
2016, Convention of States forged 300 challenge coins, limited edition medallions engraved with Founding Father George Mason's likeness. Minted to honor those who go above and beyond the call of duty, these coins were for 7 years bestowed upon the most deserving candidates. In 2023, 300 more coins were forged with Tom Coburn's likeness on it. Today, we have the honor to award coin number 307, only the 7th one of these to go out. This challenge coin symbolizes a small token of our boundless appreciation to the dedication this individual has given to Colorado Convention of States. 2 weeks after signing the petition in March of 2019, he became a follow-up team member. He became a volunteer activist in June of 2020, and finally, Art Sickler became our Veterans Coalition Director in 2022. Under Art's leadership, the VCD team has grown to be an invaluable part of Colorado's COS. His team has created a master plan for the veterans of Colorado that I would dare to say is above any other state. His ability to connect with and lead the veterans has allowed the Convention of States to participate in more events in 2023, possibly than in any other year, and they are working tirelessly to do even more in 2024. Art is extremely humble. He allows his team the freedom to try new things, yet keeps them reined in when necessary. He's organized, smart, and a very effective leader. He's respected by the veterans who work with him, and he certainly has my complete respect. It is an honor to work with Art. Help me congratulate Art Sickler.
Will it work? Okay. Before I give this to Art, I want to say something about the Challenge Coin Award. You heard some numbers that 300 of these were given away in the first 10 years of the organization. And that sounds like a lot. When you think 300 people, that's a lot of people getting an award. But I want you to understand this is out of an organization of 5.3 million people over 10 years. And that means every year, no more than 30 coins are given away in any given year. And that's extraordinary. You have extraordinary people all over the country at all levels in the organization giving their time, their treasure, putting their honor on the line for us. And so when somebody gets awarded a challenge coin, it really is extraordinary. And we realized when we first started giving them out that people were actually carrying these around with them. And I was worried about that. And the reason I was worried is I don't want them lost. And the reason I don't want them lost is because I do believe that we're going to save the country. And when we do, they're going to want those in the Smithsonian. And so we made the challenge coin pin, which Art is now proudly wearing on his lapel. And when I travel around the country, I look for those. And when I see those, I can tell you honestly, I get choked up. Because I know if somebody's wearing one of those, it's a truly extraordinary human being that has gone far beyond the call of duty. Art is somebody who took the oath when he joined the military, and that oath never expires. And Art is a person who lives that through and through. Art, it's an honor to present you with this challenge coin. God bless you, my friend.
I don't think Mark needs an introduction, but we are honored that he has taken time to come talk with Colorado. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Meckler.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you gave me an unwired mic because I love to pace when I talk. First of all, round of applause for Laura and her great leadership in this state. It doesn't happen without great leadership. You know, the country is a mess right now. I don't know if anybody watched the news this morning. You got all this stuff going on at all these universities all across the country. Some people say that these are protests. I'm really precise in my language. These are not protests going on at these universities. These are terrorist occupations. And we should call them what they are. I believe these students should be arrested. If they're on student visas, they should be immediately deported. They should be prosecuted. They should be expelled from these institutions. I'm for Texas. I have to congratulate Governor Abbott. He took the right action there. I just saw, as I was standing up here on my phone, something popped up. University of Georgia, they just not only raided this terrorist encampment, but they used rubber bullets, and they're serious, and they're getting rid of them. So some states are going to do the right thing, and this is what we got to do. So look, the country is at stake right now. This is funded, the proof is out there, funded by George Soros and his minions, and they're trying to destroy America. This is happening all over the country. And so what I like to do is I like to go personally into the deepest, darkest places where we think the enemy is, and I like to find the light in those places. So last week, I had the opportunity to go speak at UC Berkeley. So, kind of like going to Boulder, right? Maybe a little worse. And so I speak at Berkeley once a year. And every time I go to speak at UC Berkeley, I speak to a political science class, 600 or 700 kids. There's never a protest, by the way. And this is really interesting. This poli-sci professor, when he invites people like me to speak, he doesn't announce who the speaker is going to be. Most of these protests really are organized and fomented by people who come from off campus. I'm telling you, Berkeley is just insane. There's a lot of insane people who live there, a lot of anti-American people, so they come and foment this. They get a bunch of the students to participate, and you get stuff like what you see with Ben Shapiro or Charlie Kirk. Now, to be fair, when Ben goes there or Charlie goes there, they want the excitement, right? They get a lot more clicks. If the protest happens, if people riot a little bit, if people are screaming and yelling at them, I don't go there for that reason. I go because I want to have a conversation with young people who are really smart, who are ultimately going to end up leading our country. In industry, in government, in academia, the kids that go to UC Berkeley or places like that, these high-end institutions, they're going to have an incredible oversized influence on our society. So I want to go there and I want to have a real conversation with them. I think this is important in politics to remember when we're out there talking to people, whether it's convention of states or something else, that there is a big difference between debate and discussion. And I do both. Sometimes I debate people. It's not very common. It's pretty rare that we actually do a debate, or I'm even in a singular conversation with somebody that I consider a debate. In a debate, your singular goal should be, if you're in a debate, to destroy your opponent, to humiliate them, to make them feel ignorant, to have the people around you, if other people are watching, think, as it said on the internet, oh, Meckler destroyed that guy, or so-and-so destroyed that person, so-and-so embarrassed that person. That's what you do in a debate, because a debate is for the benefit of the people watching the debate. It's not intended to convince the person that you're debating with. I can honestly say in my entire life, I've never debated with somebody, win, lose, or draw, and have the other person think, you know what, I think Meckler's probably right. He humiliated me and mocked me in front of all my peers, and so I think I'm going to go his way. It just doesn't work that way in a debate, and we've all had this experience. I'm not just talking on a debate stage, I'm talking with your family or your friends, and you get into a debate, and it ends up being heated, then everybody ends up saying things maybe they regret, and you burn a relationship, and you're never going to convince somebody that way. The other way of talking with people about politics is to have a discussion. And in a discussion, I would argue that's 95% of the time you're talking to anybody, your goal is to create sympathy and empathy and understanding. It is to communicate a message to somebody, and what you hope for is in the end that they walk away with something that they didn't have before. Maybe they don't agree with you, you didn't win, that's not the goal, but the goal is you made them think. And that's what a discussion is about. So when I go to UC Berkeley and I go to this class, my goal is to have a discussion with these kids. It's not to debate these kids. It's not to crash the libs or slam the libs. It's to see if I can put something in their heads that changes the way that they think. And I want to give you a little bit of hope by telling you that the kids at UC Berkeley are really smart. And when you go into a class like this and you start to talk with them, you realize they're smart, but they're really ignorant. They don't understand the world, because most of the kids that go to a place like UC Berkeley or NYU or Columbia, they've been told the same things since they were little kids, literally. Their parents raised them to be leftists. Their grammar school teachers, middle school, high school teachers taught them to be leftists, taught them to be victims, taught them about white supremacy, taught them about critical race theory in the last few years, talking about gender ideology. They never got the other side. And so by the time they get to a place like UC Berkeley, that's literally all they know. It's all they've ever heard. They don't listen to alternative media sources. They listen to media sources only on the far left. They listen to each other, and then their professors just reinforce all this stuff. So you go into a classroom, to me, I consider that an amazing opportunity. So the first thing I do when I walk into a classroom like that is I want them to know exactly who I am, because remember, they don't know who I am when I walk in that room. And I walk up on stage, the prof introduces me and just kind of says my background real quickly and my name. And what you see first, it's an auditorium, about 600 kids. It's kind of dark out in the auditorium. And you see the auditorium light up because now everybody's looking at their cell phone or their iPad or their computer. Who's this Mark Meckler guy, right? And what are they going to get? You know, they're going to go to their sources and they're going to get, I'm a white supremacist, I'm a Nazi, I'm a homophobe, I'm an Islamophobe, you know, all this stuff, right? They're going to get all that stuff. It's going to reinforce their impressions of who I am, and I think that's fine. And then what I do is I decide I'm going to talk about all the worst, most controversial, difficult political stuff that there is. That's how I'm going to open my speech, because I want them to know who I am. And so I'm unabashedly pro-life, 100%, no exception. I talk about that. And when I say that in a classroom like that, they'll go, ooh, right? I'm pretty open. I say I am an old, white, Christian, Bible-thumping, gun-toting, Tea Party Republican. Yeah, that's not the reaction I get at Berkeley, by the way. You hear the ooh kind of in the crowd when I do that. I go through abortion and I say I'm pro-life, and I talk about the border, and I say I think we should lock down the border and do mass deportations. I talk about radical Islam and the danger of radical Islam to the world. By the way, there's multiple students in the audience wearing hijab, and so I know what my audience is. I talk about China and the dangers of the CCP and Chinese infiltration in the United States of America. By the way, CCP has a huge formal presence on the campus of UC Berkeley. A lot of the students that come over from China, they are card-carrying members of the CCP. So I'm going to go to everything controversial. I talk about the alphabet soup people, as I call them, because I'm not going to say all the LGB stuff. So I say the alphabet soup people and how I don't believe in all that crazy gender ideology. Men are men and women are women, and neither can become other. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as trans people. I say it all, right? And so by the time I'm done saying all that stuff, what you see is like half, three-quarters of the students are like this. Like arms are crossed. I can always tell at that point in the audience who the conservatives are. There are conservatives at UC Berkeley. They got huge smiles on their face and they're nodding. They've never heard this at UC Berkeley. So I say all that, and then I say, we have the most contentious election of our lifetime coming up, literally, certainly of your young lifetimes, and you're going to make a choice. And we have a unique opportunity to make a choice. You got two presidents running against each other. We know what the country was like under each of those presidents, and we're going to make a choice. And the most important thing that we can do as American citizens in making that choice is talk to each other, is learn from each other, is listen to each other, and is not hate on each other. The parties want us to hate each other, and we should not hate each other in the United States of America. If we are going to preserve the Union, and I believe we need to, then we have to have respect for one another. Now, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean be weak. It doesn't mean don't speak the truth. I told all these kids unabashedly who I am and what I am, but I'm going to do it respectfully. And so then I started to walk them through a series of examples of what I mean by how we should deal with each other politically. And I said, I'm a pro-life person. Look, my belief is that life begins at conception, and that our job, thank you, life does begin at conception. That's just a fact. It's not hard to say. Life begins at conception, and that we shouldn't terminate human life. We shouldn't kill babies. That's my belief, right? And so I say that openly, man, and especially the young women in class, you can see the body language. They just hate that. And I say, you should be able to articulate why I believe that. And if you can't say why pro-life people believe what they believe, then you're ignorant. And you're never going to convince anybody, and you're never going to have a conversation. And I say the thing that I hear most often about why I am pro-life from people on the left is they say, I want to control women's bodies. And I said, and if you've ever said that in your life, then that was idiotic. And if you hear anybody say that, then they're an idiot. I can't even control my own wife, let alone control women's bodies. It's just absolutely an absurd thing to say, and no person who is pro-life has ever said that. And I tell them, look, I hang out in the most conservative Christian circles. I hang out with pastors all over the country. I speak in churches. Nobody says that. So don't say it. It's stupid and it's insulting, and you should be able to intelligently, your smart kids, articulate a position. And I said, look, I can articulate your position. I understand why you're pro-choice, because you would say to me, Mark, I believe that a woman should be able to control her own body, and that it makes us very uncomfortable. We don't like it. We're going to push back against the idea that government could create regulations that force women to do something that they don't want to do. I can articulate that position. I don't agree with it, but I can articulate it. I can also tell you that when you articulate it that way, it makes me uncomfortable. Like, I don't like the government controlling people. I don't like the government telling people what to do. Just that's how I'm wired generally. So when you say that to me, we're now having a discussion where I don't empathize with you. I don't believe in what you believe. I don't have your experience, your set of beliefs, but I can sympathize with what you're saying. I can actually have a rational conversation with you. And that's a good thing to be able to do. And I went through all these issues and I explained what both sides are, what's the rational position on both sides of those things, if we can try to find a rational position for them. And I said, that's how we should talk to each other. And then I explained Convention of States. Then I go to Convention of States and I say, the government, pardon my language, is screwing all of you over. I'm talking to 18 to 21-year-olds. You guys are all getting screwed by both parties. Both parties for decades have imposed trillions of dollars of debt on you, and you're going to pay that debt. I'm 62 years old. It might come crashing down in my lifetime. For sure, it's going to come crashing down on you. And what that means is you're not going to be able to afford to buy a house. You're not going to be able to afford to buy a car. Inflation is going to be completely out of control. The money in your pocket is going to be worth less every day. And that the government in Washington, D.C. is imposing that on all of you. And it's not just Democrats. It's Republicans and Democrats, and it's multiple administrations. It's every administration in modern history has done this to you. And you should be pissed off about that, is what I tell them. And if you're not pissed off, then you're just a fool. You should be angry about this, and you should want to take power away from Washington, D.C., and you should want to give it back to the people in your state. And in California, what that means is the supermajority in the California legislature would have more power. Do I like that? No, I don't really like that, because if I was in California, I'm a Republican. I'd vote to throw all those guys out of office. I'd work to throw them out of office. I'm not going to hide that. But this is the state of the electorate in California. It's a supermajority, so liberals should run the state. And the federal government shouldn't tell them how to do it. And even if Trump's president, Trump shouldn't tell you how to do it. And the Supreme Court, generally speaking, shouldn't tell you how to do it. And Congress shouldn't tell you how to do it. California should run California. Colorado should run Colorado. Texas and Oklahoma should run their respective states. And what you can see as I look out at this audience of young people, they're all going like this. They're all nodding their heads. They all agree with that. So I go to Q&A, and it's generally productive and kind. And after class is over, a bunch of students come to the front of the classroom. There's probably 6 to 10 of them that come up and just unabashedly say, I'm a conservative. It's so refreshing to hear you on campus. Thanks for coming here. Most conservatives are just too afraid to come. Everybody wants to hide who they are. It just makes me feel better to hear you on stage saying everything that I believe. A bunch of them ask for jobs, literally. How do we get involved in politics and conservative politics? My son's a lawyer in D.C., works for America First Legal. All he does, and he's a Marine, by the way, all he does is sue the Biden administration every single day. Happiest lawyer I've ever met in my life. So I refer a bunch of these kids to him, and he'll help them get internships and get placed on the Hill. But the more interesting to me are the liberal kids who come up to me. And there's hope in this. And they come up, there's probably 20 or 30 of them, and they approach me one by one. I take as many questions as I can, and I hear this over and over. Thank you for coming. Never heard the things you said before. Never in my whole life has anybody ever talked to me the way you talk today. Now, I've just not been exposed. And they would say things like, look, I don't agree with everything you said, but it was incredible to hear that stuff. It was a challenge to hear some of that stuff. And we really appreciate that you're here. And some of them get into specifics with me. I had 3 young girls who stuck around the longest, all self-identified liberals. They came up to me and said that. And they said, we have a question for you, a fundamental question about this election. I said, we hear a lot of people say here on campus and in the news that if Donald Trump wins the election, democracy is at stake in America. Anybody ever hear that? Yeah, we hear that all the time. And we hear that he's an autocrat, a tyrant, a dictator, right? So what do you think about those things? And I said, well, first of all, anybody who tells you that democracy is at stake is a civics idiot. We don't live in a democracy. And literally these 3 girls looked at me like, what do you mean? Like nobody had ever told them this. These are
college freshmen and sophomores and juniors, I don't think there's any seniors in this class, they had never heard that we don't live in a democracy. Smart kids, educated kids, right? But ignorant kids. And so I explained to them the difference, and I looked at them, I said, you guys believe in protecting minority rights, don't you? That's a shibboleth on the left. They're all, yeah, absolutely, minority rights. I said, well, a democracy, a true democracy, crushes the minority. It's just majority rule, the majority overruns the minority, minorities have no representation, and so you don't want that. You don't want to live in a democracy, do you? They're like, no, definitely. So, I guarantee you these kids are going to go out and tell their friends, like, we don't want to live in a democracy, it's really bad. And so they said, well, what about Trump being an autocrat? And I said, well, let's talk about what that is. And we go through, they didn't know the definition of autocracy. And we basically got down to basically what they were saying is Trump's going to be a dictator, right? And so they go through that, and I said, well, tell me what Trump did in his first presidency that was dictatorial. They just stared at me. They got no actual information, words, right? Somebody said Trump's a dictator, Trump's an autocrat. So they're repeating that. They're like, well, we don't know. And I said, well, that's because he didn't. That's just, he was a rule of law president, whether you loved him or hated him, he followed the law. Supreme Court, federal courts told him he couldn't do stuff. He didn't do that stuff. That's not why a dictator does. I said, let's talk about Joe Biden. Joe Biden said he's going to forgive your student loans, right? They said, yeah. I said, I don't know what you guys think about that. By the way, you're going to pay those loans anyway in the form of taxes, you and all your friends. No such thing as loan forgiveness. It's transfer of liability. Poor people are going to pay the loans for you guys that got to go to UC Berkeley. Hopefully you go out and earn a good living, and then you'll make the poor people pay your loans. Seems pretty lousy. But the Supreme Court told him he can't do that. And what did Joe Biden say? I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. You know what that is? That's an autocrat or a dictator. That's literally what that is. I said, Joe Biden looks at the border. He says, I know there are laws that require us to have the border closed. I'm going to ignore those laws because I got a big heart. I'm going to let everybody in. You know what that is? That's a dictator. That's an autocrat. Like, there's rule of law, and he just doesn't care what the law is, or what his administration doesn't care what the law is. That's what dictatorship or autocracy looks like. And I gave them all my cards, and I said, look, if you have any questions, you text me, and we'll get on the phone. We'll talk about this stuff. Somebody says something to you that doesn't sound right or you don't understand, get on the phone. Somebody on the right says something seems crazy to you, we'll get on the phone. They took my cards. They've all texted me and thanked me since. The reason that I tell you that story is I can go to UC Berkeley and find hope for America. It's yeah, it's good. It's good. Be hopeful. Look, it's horrifying that those kids don't know the difference between a democracy and a republic, but it's so encouraging that smart people, when you tell them the truth, they understand it immediately, and they're willing to change their opinions, or they're at least willing to listen. And we have to do that with each other. And I want to apply that to us right here. This is really important. I was in Wyoming last night. You guys are here. We're here at the Capitol in Colorado. I see all over the country right now, Republicans destroying Republicans, right? So in other words, if you're not a purist by the terms of, say, Matt Gaetz or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Paul Gosar, then you're a rhino, right? I get called a rhino. I think my record's pretty clear. I'm a pretty conservative guy. I get called a rhino all the time, because I don't believe that we should be committing warfare against each other as Republicans consistently when the Democrats in here are trying to burn your state to the ground. We need to stand together. We need to learn not to hate on each other, let alone hate on the left. We need to learn to be able to do what Reagan said, man, when I can get 80% of a loaf, I'm going to take that 80% and I'm going to go home. In today's modern politics, and I'm seeing this in DC and I'm seeing it in state capitals all over the country, somebody's like, hey, look, I'm willing to vote for 80%, and a bunch of other people in the caucus go, oh, well, you're a rhino then, because you didn't fight for the 100%. Politics is a game of reality, and if you don't acknowledge the reality, you're going to lose. You can only get what you can get. When you're in a legislature, and look, I've not worked inside the legislature, but we have folks here who do and who have. You got to compromise. That's the only way things get done, and especially in your own caucus, and you're the majority, and you've got a majority, you got a slim majority, there's going to be compromise in the caucus, and we shouldn't attack people who do that, and I'm going to make this very particular. So we see Mike Johnson now as the Speaker of the House. Anybody frustrated with Mike Johnson right now? Yeah, there's a bunch of people. I'm frustrated with Mike Johnson a little bit right now. I had dinner with Mike Johnson 2 weeks ago. I'm not saying that to name drop. I'm saying it to tell you what I know about the character of the man that I sat and had dinner with, right? And he had this dinner and invited several of us to dinner, a total of 20 people, so we got to talk to him. And Johnson, what he wanted that dinner for was to hear from us. Not to talk to us, but people like me who lead large organizations nationally. And what we told him generally, it was off the record, so I can't be really specific. We told him, hey, we're pissed off at you. Our people are angry. They're carrying pitchforks and torches, metaphorically speaking. They feel like you're giving away the shop. They don't get it. They don't understand it. They're angry. Right now, a lot of them are talking motion to vacate. And I said it. Kevin Roberts from Heritage was there. He said it. I mean, it was universal. Like, none of us were like, hey, we love what you're doing. You're awesome. We were frustrated. And he explained why he's doing what he's doing. And he said, look, I have a 1 or 2 vote margin, the smallest margin in the history of Congress. And there's only so much I can do, and it's not much. We have this motion to vacate rule. It says that the most radical member of my Congress, out at the very farthest fringe, wherever it is, left, right, or center, that person can bring a motion to vacate and shut down the entire House of Representatives, shut down the Republican caucus. And we're talking the fringe. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean the smallest group in Congress can shut down the House, can call for a motion to vacate. You can't operate a legislative body that way, right? And so he said, so I deal with that. I deal with this far fringe. Some of the people in Congress, the most important thing for them is how many clicks they get, how many likes they get on a Facebook post or on X now, right? How much that X is being shared. That's what they really care about. That's not governance. It's not responsible. It's not statesmanship. And I'm not calling out people, I'm not naming names, but we can't run the country that way. And I'm telling you this because as Convention of States people, we can't operate that way. I was in Wyoming last night, and our state director, Julie's here out in the audience somewhere. I don't know where she is, but she's out here. And we got people from Kansas. Julie's right there. We got people from Kansas drove in. We get attacked, by the way, in Wyoming by the John Birch Society so viciously you can't even imagine. And they showed up last night at our meeting, and they're really abusive and terrible. We don't respond in kind. We don't act like that. We go into the legislature, we are kind to legislators. So we go into this building, we're kind to the Democrats who oppose us. I watched this Colorado team, listen to this Colorado team give testimony in the Colorado legislature on Monday. I'm so proud of you guys. It was perfect, absolutely perfect. You could not have done a better job. And you know, whatever they want to say about you when you leave, they're going to say those people are smart, they understand their topic, they stayed on topic, they were courteous as to the time restraints, and they like you, whether they like what you're doing or not when you leave. There's nothing they can say bad about you other than maybe they disagree with your position on the topic. And that's really important. You don't go, let's go all the way back to the beginning of this. You're not going to make any friends, and you're not going to convince anybody by going in there and yelling at people and being rude. And that's what our opponents do in a lot of states. They're rude, they're mean, they lie, they slander, they attack the legislators and tell them how stupid they are if they support us. That doesn't convince anybody. You guys are doing a great job here in Colorado. You know, I think sometimes people who are working in a blue state, they get frustrated. They're like, we're in a blue state. It's hard to get anything done in a blue state. That's not untrue. It's hard in a blue state. It's much harder inside that building in a blue state. I got to tell you, though, and Kevin remembers this, we didn't get stopped by Democrats back when you were a red state. We got stopped by Republicans in this state, right? We had a chance. We had our chance when we ran the state. It was Republicans, I would say crazy, mean, nasty Republicans who attacked us in the way the John Birch Society does, who stopped us in the state. It was actually Rocky Mountain gun owners were the ones who really came after us hard, came after a lot of great legislators. Again, they didn't like legislators that do 90% of the right stuff. For 10%, they wanted to remove these guys. So, you know, we actually bit ourselves, hurt ourselves, not us as COS, but the legislature, because now it's a blue legislature. So now you operate in a blue state. That's difficult. By the way, I just want to say one thing unequivocally and clearly. This is not permanently a blue state, okay? Absolutely not. This is still the Wild West. This is still the Mountain West. And that spirit still lives strong in this state, and I believe this is going to be a red state. It's on my list of states that we're going to flip back to the red. So what do you do in a state like this? How do you deal with that? Can you have success? I would say we measure success differently in a blue state. One question that you measure is, do we get a committee hearing? And that's really important. You're not going to go anywhere. You don't get any incremental change if you don't get a committee hearing. You have to get in front of a committee. You have to do a good job in front of the committee, and you have to impress people. And politics is a game of increments. So we got a committee hearing. I understand it's frustrating. It's disappointing. You didn't get the votes that you wanted to get out of committee. Are we going to be back next year? Yeah. Absolutely. Now the question, do you think we could get Democrat votes? Yes. Yes, that is absolutely correct. I have proof of this. In Massachusetts, which by the way is a much, much, much more blue state than Colorado. It's not even close. It's as deep, it's almost black. I would call it indigo blue. It's so blue, right? We passed out of 2 committees there. We had a joint committee that was 13 Democrats and 2 Republicans on a committee. And we did our committee hearing. Our team was awesome, just like you guys were. They vote in what's called executive session. I hate that, so you can't tell how anybody votes. They like to do that in some states so they can hide how they vote. It might have been good for us because we passed that committee. How do you do that? 2 Republicans, 13 Democrats, and we passed the committee? Well, that's because a bunch of Democrats voted for us. We had another committee vote, our second committee vote there, and we passed out of that. I think there were 9 members of that committee, and there are 5, I think it's, I want to say 6-3 Democrat on that committee. We passed that committee. 2, we call it the Massachusetts miracle. So it definitely can happen. So it's happened in Massachusetts. We didn't quite make it to the floor yet. They're still in session, so we could make it to the floor there. That's our goal. Our next incremental goal is just get to the floor. If I get to the floor, I'm going to be honest with you, we could have a miracle, but I don't expect to win on the floor in Massachusetts right now. But we are making incremental progress in there. We are convincing Democrats that it's in their interest to get Washington, D.C. off their backs and let them do what they want to do, even in a blue state. So it's not just Massachusetts. You can say, well, Mark, well, that's an outlier. That's just weird. That doesn't happen anywhere else. Well, Hawaii, by the way, I said Massachusetts is so deep blue, it's black. I don't even know what you would call, Hawaii's a black hole. It's so blue, right? There are none Republicans in the Hawaii Senate. None, 0. So how do you make progress there? Well, we made progress there because we had 5 Democrat sponsors in Hawaii. 5 Democrat sponsors in the Senate. We passed out of the Senate. It was a joint committee. We passed out of the Senate and House committees in Hawaii. Didn't make it to the floor. Everybody's disappointed by that. I say hallelujah. We call it the Hawaii hallelujah, right? That's pretty good. Look, this is going on all over the country. What do you think of Illinois, red or blue? Blue, yeah, very blue state. I think we're up to somewhere between 5 and 8 Democrat sponsors in the Illinois legislature right now, right? So progress in blue. So I don't want you to think we're in a blue state and we can never do anything, because that's just not true. How do you do it? And this is the key. How did these guys do it? They did it by doing exactly what you're doing. They did it because they have a great leader, like you guys have a great leader, and Laura's building a great team. A great team is built by empowering other leaders. It's not built by one person. It's by Laura empowering somebody like Art, who steps up and is a great leader and leads his part with wisdom and with character so that people want to follow. And when you do that in a state, you build your team bigger and bigger and more powerful, and eventually you're passing committees, and eventually you're getting a floor vote, and eventually you get across the finish line. It takes time. One thing I noted is you were giving out the awards, the Patriot pins, and like 2 years, 3 years, those are people who got in and committed themselves and worked. They didn't come here once and go, it's too hard, the Democrats control. We do get people like that, but they're not the people who end up leading. They're not the people who get Patriot pins and challenge coins. Those are people who are in the fight, and they know why they're in the fight, and they stick around. And I know why you're in the fight. Specifically, I know why you're in the fight. You're in the fight because you understand duty. I know we saw all these veterans up here. There's something that veterans understand is duty. They gave an oath. They swore an oath. And that oath never expires. And that oath says that they're going to do a duty. And I remember watching my son swear into the United States Marine Corps. I was not in the military myself, and so I never took that oath. So I didn't know what the oath was. And I watched him swear that oath. And it's not done in a big ceremony. It's done at a recruiting center. Some junior enlisted is there swearing them in. I think it was my son and one other person. It's very emotional if you're a parent watching your kid do that. I remember watching him do it. It's just a couple days before Christmas when he swore in and went away to boot camp. I remember watching him do it, and the thing that blew my mind that I didn't know is it said that he took an oath to protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I had no idea that oath had anything to do with the Constitution. I just figured it would be an oath to the Marine Corps, or to the United States of America, right? But no, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I remember thinking at that time, if my son, who was 18 at the time, just a kid, is willing to sign on the dotted line and be willing to spill blood, literally, to give his life to protect the Constitution of the United States of America, then I'll never give up fighting. I'll never quit fighting. I have a duty to fight, right? We have a duty to fight. So I'm going to close with a story for you guys, which is a story of John Quincy Adams. Forgive me if you've heard me tell this story. I'm going to tell it over and over until the day I die. John Quincy Adams was the 6th president of the United States of America. Not a very impressive president. One-term president. You can't say here are the huge accomplishments of John Quincy Adams' presidency. Probably maybe that's why he was a one-term president. But he leaves the presidency and he does something unheard of in the annals of American history. He runs for Congress. And that's so bizarre. I can't even imagine that. Can you imagine like Donald Trump as a backbencher in the Congress? No. Or Barack Obama or any of these guys that we knew as presidents deciding to run for Congress afterwards. Absolutely not. But he did it because he believed in abolition so strongly. He had not accomplished it as president that he was going to dedicate his life to fighting for that. So he goes to Congress. He serves 17 years in the United States Congress with single-minded focus for the abolition of slavery, to remove this stain of slavery from this great nation. What commitment. That's absolutely incredible. By the way, no bills are introduced to abolish slavery. He can't get anybody to sign on with him. He doesn't get committee hearings. It's just loss after loss, year after year, gets reelected and loses and reelected and loses in Congress. He's so difficult on this issue that his fellow congressmen passed something euphemistically called the John Quincy Adams Censure Act. And what it said was, if he comes on the floor and he talks about abolition again, we're going to hold a 5-day censure trial. And we're going to censure him for this. This tells you who Quincy Adams was. He thought, well, that's a good idea. I'll get to talk about abolition for 5 days. So he did it. Absolutely incredible. He was known as the Hellhound of Abolition. He died on the floor of the United States House of Representatives. And if you go to Statuary Hall today, that used to be inside the House, there's a plaque on the floor where he actually fell. They actually took him off the floor. He died in what's now called the Women's Cloakroom, right there outside the House of Representatives. And he hadn't accomplished abolition. Before he died, a reporter asked him why he kept doing what he was doing. Why do you keep fighting for this? Everybody's irritated with you. The journalists don't like you. Your colleagues don't like you. You don't do anything else. Why do you keep doing this when you know you can't accomplish it? And he said, duty is ours. Results belong to God. He wasn't worried about the results. He was a man who understood duty, and he was going to do that duty until his last breath, and indeed he did. And I think he could have died if he didn't understand duty so well, believing, I have failed. I believe that he believed something biblical when he died. I believed he said what Paul said shortly before he went to his death, which is, I have run the race, right? And ran the whole race. That's what John Quincy Adams did. The amazing epilogue to the story is, during his last term of office, there was a young congressman who was so enamored to be sitting with a president in Congress that he just followed him everywhere. And they became really close friends. And this congressman learned everything John Quincy Adams had to teach. What was it like being president? How did you get things done? How do we get stuff done in Congress? But mostly he learned about abolition. And he learned Quincy Adams what he called the 3-part plan, or the 3-step plan to abolition. And when John Quincy Adams died, this young congressman was given the great honor of being one of his pallbearers. That's how close they had become. That congressman, at the end of his term, wanted to run for another term, and his state delegation told him, no, you need to come home. You need to go back to your home state. Back then, by the way, there were no primaries. The parties said who the slate of candidates would be. You had no chance to just decide you were going to run. That was back before the early 1900s. That's when we started primaries, started in Wisconsin. So he doesn't get to run again. A couple years later, he convinces the party to let him run. He runs and he loses. He's not a congressman again. He runs again and he loses. Runs again and he loses. Like, this guy's like a 3-time loser, right? And finally he runs the 4th time he's run, and he's elected. Every one of you knows who he is because he's the great emancipator. It's Abraham Lincoln. And I think that story is so incredibly important because John Quincy Adams was a man who understood duty. Didn't care about the result, understood his duty no matter what, that he was going to do that duty. In the end, doing that duty resulted in training up the man who would ultimately end slavery in the United States of America. And that story is so important because there are going to be times in your life, maybe when you come to the Capitol, maybe when you call somebody in the follow-up tool, maybe when you talk to your legislator, and it's so frustrating and there's so much anguish and you feel like we're never going to get this done. I don't know how we're ever going to do this. Maybe we can't save the country. And you might feel like quitting. And if you get to that moment, I ask that you remember John Quincy Adams, because that was a man who understood his duty. And I know you guys understand your duty. I know your leadership here in the state understands the duty. I know there are legislators in there and former legislators like Kevin who understand that duty. That's why I'm so sure that we are going to restore the Republic. Thank you guys for having me today. God bless you guys for coming out.
Give him another hand. Was that not inspirational and awesome? Woo! All right, how many believe Colorado going to be one of those 34 states? I say yes. I say yes, and it's going to take all of us to do it. And you've heard it before. You know, whatever time you have, your call to action, guys. Get involved. Get to know your legislators, even if Mark Ryan is here. Your legislator is not for you. He is definitely against you. Just get to know them. Get to know them as a person. Don't even talk about convention of states. Go talk about family and what's going on. Get them to like you, because people buy from people they like, and we are selling. But what we are selling is important. It is our nation. We have a nation to save, so we need to do it. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you.